How are you, my friend?
Not too bad. Not too bad.
Good.
How are you? Are you getting any sleep?
I'm getting loads of sleep. Sleeping through the night, in fact. I am sleeping like a baby. So for 14 minutes at a time. No, everything's good. Everything here is actually tickety-boo, really. But I've got some exciting news.
Yeah,
We have got the first winner of our 6-week Capture One competition lined up. So we have been through all the random number generators, and we have pulled out of the internet's random hat for a 6-month subscription, all-inclusive, to Capture One. Thank you, Capture One, by the way, for providing these. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about, you should go and hit subscribe on our YouTube channel, because that is what we are doing. We are giving away 6 of these all-inclusive Capture One licenses. They're 6 months at a time. It's a decent price. I'd be chuffed with it. And we have the first winner. And we have been through all the random lists, and we have picked out of the hat someone called Scott McCauley. So, Scott, if you are listening, please reach out to us. We'll reach out to you as well. And congratulations on winning. And all you need to do is hit subscribe. Not even asking for likes. You want to leave us a comment, obviously that helps. But
helps us go, oh, that was nice of you.
Yeah. Oh, a comment. How lovely.
Makes us feel warm inside.
It does. So if you'd like us to feel warm inside, please hit subscribe and enter our competition. You do need to do nothing else like that. Your statutory rights are not affected. And how exciting. So Scott, well done. And
congrats.
Let's move on with the show.
So what's new?
Well, honestly, not a lot. Right. So it used to be that, I'd be like, I've got some new gear. Let me talk you through it. I don't buy gear anymore, but I do read now. So I think I talked about this on the last episode. I've been reading this book, which is Essentialism by Greg McKeown. And it has been super, super helpful in me cutting out, turns out, a lot of unnecessary stuff that I was doing, maybe whether it was procrastination or distraction or all sorts of stuff. But it's been really useful to try and help me filter out a lot of that stuff, which is, unfortunately, Greg, why I've not been in touch. Sorry.
I've been filtered out.
Yeah, imagine that. Imagine that. Podcast. Done. No, I consider this an essential part of my world. So that's why I'm still here. But yeah.
Is it an interesting book? Because I find that these self-help books are... I mean, I'm trying to listen to one at the moment as an audiobook, and it's doing my head in. It's not that book, obviously. So what I'm saying is it... are you reading it and going, actually, this is nice because interesting and so it's not kind of all about like, if you want to be the next investor entrepreneur, this is what you need to do.
No, it's not. I mean, I have lots of those books. I think I talked about it on the last episode. My mission for 2024 is to read all these books that are behind me, and it turns out most of them about either time management or getting things done. So there are a few in there which are trash, so I am going to get rid of those. But this one's really good. This Greg McKeown guy, it's in a really simple, straightforward...
I mean, he's got a good name to start with, so
he does, and he McKeowns it. But he, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right, so apologies. I might have just mispronounced it just to do the joke.
We have to also apologise for Tom. We've worked out that Tom's now got double dad humour, which is basically like dad humour but twice as bad
squared. It's really not good. So apologies in advance for the future.
That wasn't a bad pun though. McKeown's it.
Thanks.
If that was my surname, I think that would be my tagline.
It would be good. It would be good. But listen, I really like this book. I've actually had it for years, which is I've tried to get through it a few times, but then ironically things have got in the way. Whereas this time I'm actually sitting down to read it. Because
What page are you on?
Well, I am currently on page 153 out of 257.
That's not bad. I was hoping
I'm doing all right.
Page 5.
Page 2.
On the contents.
I'm on the index. I'm on that little bit that they do at the front. I'm at the dedication. That's where I'm at. So the reason that I'm doing all these books and reading all these books is because of next week's guest. So you know how we record this show, it's a bit all over the shop, but we have got the amazing Emily May on the show next week, and it's a wicked episode. Really enjoyed recording this one. But one of the things she says, I won't ruin it, I won't give it away. So one of the things she talks about that was really beneficial to her was carving out time for herself, part of the process, and researching, whether it's looking at photography books or whether it is just sitting down and reading a book with a coffee, or just, I think we talk about it in the episode, but we're so on the go all the time that we forget to make time for ourselves. And now what's interesting is that I was reading this book at the same time we recorded Emily. Not the exact same time. So
rude.
Yeah. So Emily, talk to me about your. Oh yeah, cool, right, yeah, great. No, so I've been reading this now for a while because I'm a very slow reader, and she talks about looking after yourself, and I then we finished the episode, and I did some dad stuff and some work, and then in the evening I sat down, I think with a drink, and I was just like, I'm going to read this book. And I opened it up, and the first chapter it got to was something called Protecting the Asset. Now, obviously, it sounds like corporate speak, but the asset is you.
Right.
How are you going to look after the business if you don't look after yourself first? And I was like, oh, right, yeah, cool. I'm getting at this at every angle. Getting it from guests on the podcast. I'm getting it from the books I read. So actually, now I'm really trying to take time to read and look after myself.
Okay.
It's work. Honestly, the stress levels have just plummeted. It's really nice.
And what techniques are you
Even
using,
though I still have a cold.
Yeah.
Well, so the one of the big things is they do like a wardrobe analogy, and they basically like, can you get rid of this? How much is it worth to you? And would you keep it if you had to buy it again?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I wouldn't buy this again. Therefore, I don't value it enough to keep it. Let's get rid of it.
Yeah.
It's one of the other
like
things.
The Marie Kondo kind of approach.
Yeah, right. So, but this book actually brings me joy, whereas the Marie Kondo stuff makes me kind of go, oh, I wish I could tidy as well as her. But with the book also, it there's a big part of it is opportunity cost, and for people who don't know what opportunity cost is, it's what is the cost of you taking that opportunity. Say, for example, someone comes to me and says, Tom, we've got an amazing job for you, but it's low pay, but the subject's going to be the most interesting person you've ever met. I kind of go, well, okay, well, the opportunity cost of me taking that job is that I won't get paid very much. And then how long is that job going to last? If it's a quick 1 or 2 hour thing, cool. But if it's a 6-month project, well, the opportunity cost of that is obviously quite large. What is the alternative of you taking that job? What's the trade-off?
Yeah.
And so, you take that job means you cannot sit in front of the computer and mail out to people or do some marketing or so schedule, do the business stuff. And
I think a lot of editorial is opportunity cost, because editorial, when you actually iron out the number of days you might spend if you're shooting a feature, for example, like I've just been doing, you have to kind of work out what the actual cost of what you're earning per day can be, like minimum wage sometimes for editorial. And is that going to kind of actually, it's different if you're doing portrait work, for example, because that might be much quicker, but with features especially, it's about whether or not that project is actually going to be really beneficial for your portfolio. And the difficulty there is there's unknowns. Like, you might get promised this, that, and the other, but the reality of whether or not you're going to get access to this, that, and the other is sometimes hard to tell.
Of course, yeah. And it's but the thing is, you kind of have to do some of these things, A, to keep yourself creatively involved, because they're quite often they're quite fun. B, also for me, I kind of use it as my kind of, I do a lot of the smaller stuff, but it always means that I'm able to reach out to people with new stuff.
Yeah.
As opposed to having those.
creative freedom with it. That's such an important thing. It's like whether or not you can actually take the opportunity and turn it into something that you can instill your vision on. Because if you can do that and you can actually produce then some work, because you've been given the access to the subject, then that opportunity cost is quite minimal. Minimal or the opposite. I'm trying to work out how the opportunity cost works. But basically, you potentially you've got good body of work out of something, then that could be worth your time.
Well, the worse the job is, the bigger the opportunity cost, right?
Right. Yeah.
So the further you get away from what it is you want to be doing and stuff like that, the greater the opportunity cost. It's the cost of the opportunity.
And there's always a gamble with that, though, because even with, say, a portrait assignment, you might be told, right, actually, you've got to go. We want you to go photograph Brad Pitt, but it's for, a weekend supplement that are probably paying you less than it's going to cost to actually do the shoot if you employ assistants and hire in equipment and get backgrounds and maybe a location. But then, the gamble there is you might get an amazing picture for your portfolio, but equally you might get there and it goes terribly wrong and you come away with something and you're not that happy with it.
Yeah, that's the risk, isn't it?
There's always that risk in what we do. And I think obviously the more experienced you become, the more you're able to, in those positions, say, right, well, actually, I'm going to plan for the worst case scenario. I'm going to be able to, the worst case scenario, I'm going to get this safe image that I know I can get. When I was first learning about using lighting, I'd always make sure, or try to always make sure, that I'd get at least one or two shots that had no lighting, like natural light. Just try and get something in the can, because I find that when you're starting out, you can quite often go to those situations and focus so much on trying to get a shot that you've got in your head that's quite technical, that you actually eat up all your time doing that. And then you walk away and you go, oh, there was a really obvious shot I could have got that actually would have been great, but I was too in my head about it. And I think the more experienced you become aware that can be a danger, and you find ways to avoid doing that and reminding yourself actually that there's.
Yeah, I guess also. So I did a shoot a couple of weeks ago, and I turned up an hour and a half earlier than I should have been there, and I said, look, I mistimed my trains. Any chance you're all right if I just jump in? I know the room's free. We've got it booked all day. Are you all right if I just jump in? And so then by the time the people that were meant to be meeting me arrived, I was set up and I had my iPad I'd gone around the room, lit everything how I wanted it to be. And then I was just like, okay, look, we've got 10 minutes with these authors. I'm going to do 5 different setups. This is what I'm doing. And then obviously, in my early days of my career, I would have just turned up bang on time and be like, hello, everybody. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. And then I would have done exactly what you just said. Really just kind of go in on it, and then probably end up getting maybe 1.5 setups. And then people are like, why are you faffing with the lights and stuff? Whereas now I'm able to just be like, yeah, this is what we're doing. And here's a behind the scenes camera. If you can shoot some stuff of me shooting while I'm doing this, blah, 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 blah. And it's just an experience thing, isn't it? It would never have occurred to me to kind of do that level of like, or have an iPad or like just plan out exactly what I'm going to do. I think I would have been far more reactive earlier in the career.
Yeah, I think being prepped is important. I think some people put off preparation because it gives them anxiety in some ways, because they start to panic about it. And there is something to be said about, if you prepare too much, you can sometimes go in with maybe a set idea in your head. So you need to find that balance between being prepared, but also being able to be reactive, because sometimes the opportunities present themselves that just weren't even there to start with. And suddenly you've got to be able to be flexible enough to take them. So there is a balance still, I think, between being kind of not at all prepared, and, as you said, turning up and kind of reacting, and being too prepared and therefore becoming maybe a bit too stuck in like, no, this is what I've got to do because this is the shot I've planned for, rather than being able to say, actually, that's not going to work, and being able to kill it and move on to something else. I
think one of the great things that I learned quite early on in my career is, if something isn't working, I would just whip everything out and start from fresh. I wouldn't just, obviously only when time allows, but if something wasn't working, I wouldn't try to force it to work. I'd be like, okay, that's cool. It's not working. Move on.
Yeah.
Because then at that point, you don't want to lose the subject. You don't want to get frustrated. And obviously, if it's not working, well, there's a reason it's not working, and it might be, might be something that's just going wrong. So like, whip everything out, start again, fresh new thing, or just move on. You just go, okay, cut your losses, let's go.
Yeah.
But listen,
so the book's been good though.
The book's been great. The book's really excellent.
We'll
it's really good. And there's loads of, I think, really important things for me to. Well, there's loads of important things for all of us to take, but I'm really enjoying it, so it's going well. You talked about being prepared for a job, and you've obviously just been out on a job last week. Yeah. Now, I wanted to talk to you briefly. I don't travel and do jobs, and when I do, it's for a day max. So I take my camera bag with a light in it and a stand bag, and I jump in and out of helicopters, right? But with your stuff, it's slightly longer term. You carry...
Can be, yeah.
So it can be. Let's talk about what happened.
Well, so no, I was shooting a kind of a story on a race series out in the Middle East, and I've done over the years. I've done a lot of behind the scenes kind of at sporting events. I quite enjoy doing them because they play to my strengths and my style, which is very observed reportage work, but kind of really digging into the drama and the kind of emotional response, I guess, of people to an event, which is very observed, which means that you quite often can't plan your shots necessarily. You can have a set of images that you'd like to get, and a set of images that in your head would help tell the story, so you're kind of on the look out for them, but you can't necessarily manufacture them. You can't necessarily set them up because the nature of the type of work is very documentary. So what that means, though, is that you have to be kind of present a lot of the time and putting yourself in positions where the opportunity might arise, and therefore you have to be very reactive in the way that you're shooting, which means that you need to basically have all your kit on you. So when I'm working in those situations, I tend to wear like a think tank rig, which is got like a pack that sits in front of my tummy. It's like a chest rig almost, and has pouches for lenses, so I can shoot with two cameras and be swapping lenses in the front, almost like a kind of kangaroo pouch, and have the lenses kind of on my shoulders. The camera's on my shoulders. So using two bodies. I like to shoot with primes, but the nature of shooting, especially sporting events, you might need a telephoto, you might need like a super wide, so you need to have that extra stuff. You might need a flash, you're going to need your extra batteries, you're going to need extra memory cards, you're going to need all of this stuff. You can't be running, and you don't necessarily want to be kind of like dropping a bag and rooting around and getting stuff out, because of the nature of the job. You might not have the space physically to put that bag down, or you might be in a muddy territory, you might be in a wet territory. I was shooting in the coast, so I was in and out of boats a lot. So you kind of want to have a system where you have all of that on you. But then invariably, what's quite interesting is then when you go out in the evenings or you go out in the day, maybe you're getting some extra local color and you need to be exploring. This is very much the case when I'm shooting travel jobs. I want to have a smaller setup that looks very incognito, to be traveling around with maybe just a shoulder bag. But the problem is, it's very difficult to find a system where you've got something that doubles as a shoulder bag and doesn't necessarily look like a camera bag, but also could be your camera rig setup. So up to now, I've been using, as I said, think tank systems, because the great thing about them is they have like a harness that goes over your shoulders and clips onto the bag, but it also has a belt clip that secures at the back. So basically this waist pack that you wear on your front is kind of secured around your waist, so it's not moving, but it's also secure, but also the weight's distributed on your shoulders, so it's not like absolutely killing you if you're wearing a one-armed camera, like a slinged camera bag,
one strap
all day with one strap with loads of heavy lenses in it. That's a surefire way to nail your back.
Sure.
So this system is good, but what I'm frustrated by is there's no system yet that people have found where you can use that as a shoulder bag and it looks smart but not too not too scruffy, but not too smart, and not too corporate, and not too obviously a camera bag. So yeah, I feel like maybe we need to make an X negative one.
I mean, sure, why not? I mean, the trouble here, right, is that, and what I've really learned with bags is you're coming down to personal preference.
Yeah.
So every single person wants a different thing from a bag.
Yeah,
Some,
100%.
Want it kind of dark and kind of like completely obscure and doesn't look like a camera bag.
Yeah.
Completely nondescript, right? And that's, for me and you, I think that's what we both want, right? That's why I use the Peak Design bag. It just looks like a big rucksack.
Yeah.
Whereas some people want, bright orange accents with a big like logo on the back of it, and this is a camera bag, and like some of the stuff that people have around their waists and stuff. I've seen. I can't remember what camera company it was. It might have been the think tank sister company, Mindshift Gear. It's a lot of it's like bright grey with like quite bright green like accents and stuff like that. And I'm thinking that's not for me. And then I'll go to the photography show, for example, and there'll be lots of people walking around with bright, colourful bags and stuff like that.
Yeah, so, I mean, Newswear used to make really good, but I think we mentioned them before on the podcast, but they used to make really good, really robust kind of lens pouches and camera pouches that you could wear either as a chest rig or around your waist. But they're a bit more difficult to get hold of in the UK. I mean, Think Tank have done a great job and they're very easily accessible. I personally love my Billingham as a shoulder bag. I think they're very smart. It's very nondescript. They're very well made. They're made in England. They've been around for years and years as a camera company, but they don't make a system where you can access it from the front like that. And I feel like they're maybe missing a trick on that.
Could you not rig? With the Billingham straps. Do they clip on at the side?
Yeah, so I've actually experimented with this. So there's another company in the States called Holdfast that make these kind of rigs for. I think they were first designed really for wedding photographers. So they're leather.
Yeah,
straps.
The camera swag. What are they called? They're called the money makers.
The money makers, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Which is ironic because they cost the earth. They're beautiful. They're very well made. And the guy that kind of came up with it, I think, he was bringing out something that wasn't there, and it's since been absolutely copied to death, and you can get all sorts of rip-offs online. And I still got my original Moneymaker, and it's a great piece of kit. Now, what you could do with something like that is you could actually clip it on to the edge of a Billingham like Hadley Pro. Take the straps off the Hadley Pro and just clip that on, and it would actually swing then as a kind of fanny pack bit in the front. Well, fanny pack. We call it a bum bag, but
a bum bag. Yeah, no, that's true. It would do that. Would you like to know a really sad story? Not really sad story. Would you like to know a sad story about Holdfast, the camera company?
Go on then.
They made. I don't know if they still make it. They made a vegan moneymaker called the Camera Swag.
They still do make it, yeah.
Do they? Right. Okay. So I cannot get one. There's a stockist here in the UK, I think called Rigu, and they for the life of them have never had it in stock. I might have to order it in from America because I bought that strap, and it's one of my biggest regrets is selling it.
Yeah,
because it was the nicest webbing material I've ever had on a strap ever, and it was like an old rough feeling canvas. But like really lovely. I gotta say, everyone goes on about them being expensive. They are 100%, but the quality, that's the best camera strap other than the Peak Design stuff that I use. But they're very different beasts. There's the best double camera strap I've ever had, and I wish I'd never sold it.
Yeah, the Holdfast company, they make a lens quiver, they call it. Which is effectively
do they? Are they that smooth talking?
That does exactly what I'm saying. Sorry? I have to rewind and get that.
Oh my God, sorry. It's the worst joke I've ever said. You say Holdfast, they make a lens quiver, and I said, are they that smooth talking?
Okay.
Oh
right,
my God.
I'm going to plow on. Double dash humour.
Please
We're going to have a little alert in future for double dash humour puns.
So
this quiver kind of sits in front of you and you can drop stuff into it. But what it doesn't necessarily have is a flap that goes over the top, which could turn it into a secure bag. I guess, for going out, and wearing it as a shoulder bag casually, because the pouches are open. So anything you put in that is just easily pickpocketable, potentially. Which seems so frustrating, and I'm hoping that they do make a version with a flap, maybe an optional flap that you can buckle on.
Have you ever thought who else has their stuff around the front? Right? Have you ever looked at the porta brace stuff? Because obviously the people who also have their gear around the front are going to be people like sound recordists.
Yeah, no, and I have. So this is interesting. It comes back to the style that you were talking about, like what people want. For me, I want a camera bag that feels semi-smart, but doesn't feel too corporate, and that kind of stuff can feel very kind of techie geary, which is fine in certain situations. But I guess the interesting thing about companies like Holdfast is they're appealing to wedding photographers who need to be in situations where they look presentable. They don't want to have like a whole bunch of wires and bags hanging off them and looking quite kind of like they're photographing at the edge of a sports field. So and on that, I saw the other day that there's a company in Japan that have just bought out a suit designed for photographers. It's not had the best reviews.
I saw this. Right, yeah. So for anyone who hasn't seen this was on Petapixel the other day, right?
Yeah. It's a company called Unix, I think. And it's like, a suit that's made is just very nondescript black suit. And it's made from a material that's quite stretchy. So it's got quite clever things like pockets, which are big enough to drop a lens into and things like that. And it's interesting. I've not seen one in the flesh, so I can't possibly comment into what it's like. The review that I read was not the most supportive, I guess. It's quite a rant, in fact. But the idea of having something like that, I definitely think there is a gap in the market for things like that, because actually the nature of working in those situations of doing observed photography is you do need to carry a lot of kit, and you don't want to look like an absolute scruff bonce, as my mum used to say.
Sorry, she used to say what now? Scruff bonce?
Yeah, no idea.
Okay. Well, bonce is your head, right?
Yeah, I don't know if she knew that or not. Scruff bonce. It's its own word.
No, love it.
So yeah, but watch this space. Maybe we can in the future I'd love to speak to a company like Billingham and have them actually get some kind of real world feedback from working photographers, because I do think there is potential for those products to be designed in a way, and what you were saying about kind of certain photographers wanting certain things, there's no reason why you couldn't make bags more modular, so that if you do want orange straps, you can order orange straps with buckles, do you know what I mean, and attach them. Like there's certain ways that you can actually accessorize it, which would be quite cool if you've got like brand colors that you work with, or all my kit, for example, has certain colored tape on it, so that I know on set that's probably mine. It's covered in that tape.
That's probably yours. That's probably mine, but I reckon it'll come home with me anyway.
I've never been on set and anyone else has had the exact same way of doing it. So
what
far it's worked.
What colour do you have? I sort of imagine it to be like a, those
rainbow,
kids.
It's rainbow colour.
I knew it. I was going to say like the holographic sparkle one. The one with stars on it and stuff. But no, I knew it'd be like something like that.
Unicorn horn colour.
Is it? Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. But I think we all mark our kit in a certain way, don't we? Mine, I was going to, because I mix and match mine a lot. So a lot of my stuff, I'll bring, when you hire kit, there's certain things that I kind of have to bring or want to bring because I own it. So it doesn't make sense to hire it unless obviously it's like logistically difficult.
Or something that you've set up in a way that you know how it's set up. It's kind of annoying hiring in certain stuff that you've then got to reprogram.
100%. So I have a production case with my walkie-talkies, my director's monitor, my V-Lock batteries, all the walkie-talkie headpieces, which if anyone's ever used those walkie-talkies and has those horrible, the stock ones, they cut the inside of my ear. They're horrible. But there's silicone D-shaped ones you can get on Amazon. They're a dream, absolute dream. So I use those, and then I have all my wireless transceivers, transmitters and receivers for the iPads, the extra monitors and stuff like that, because all of that stuff can fit in one case, and you can roll that with your backpack on the train if you need to get to the job that way, or just jump in the car or jump in a van, whatever. And it seems that you're able to charge quite a lot actually for that amount of kit, because it's that stuff from hire houses tends to be quite expensive. So I do that.
And it's good because you can offer it as part of a package, which becomes very competitive for clients. So, and it means that any situation. I mean, walkie-talkies. We could talk a long time about them. I'm always been looking for the perfect system with walkie-talkies. I know your system. We've talked about it before. It's quite a nice setup. I have actually shortwave radios, but they're not the best for for kind of walkie-talkie stuff. But there's now this company that make system, I think it's called Milo, and they are designed for kind of skiers or sports people who are traveling in groups, and they're almost like little solid pucks, and they use a mesh network, and you can literally just touch it and talk, and it kind of goes out to the group. But they're much smaller than your conventional walkie-talkie, a lot more straightforward for people to use. I don't think they're perfect for what we do, but it's kind of interesting because even the other day I was looking at some old work from a travel job, and occasionally you might be on a shoot and you've got somebody who you're working with, and you kind of need somebody in the frame, but that frame is a landscape shot and they need to be 300 yards from you. And actually, in that situation, having a walkie-talkie to be able to just quickly lob them and say, okay, take this with you and go and stand on the edge of that mountain so I can get this shot, super useful. But it's the kind of thing that you maybe overlook or you don't pack, or actually traveling with walkie-talkies is one of those kind of red flags in certain countries where they're like, why have you got radio equipment? So having something that maybe is a lot more simple but works would be useful.
No, I completely agree. I think, weirdly, walkie-talkies, I bought them in a bit of a whim, kind of thinking, I'll never use these, but I'll get two. And then I used them so much, and I've had like different sets over the years, and now I'm on Motorola's, and the ones I've got are the most powerful ones you can get before having to buy a license. And the reason we've done that is because they've got privacy built into it, so you can have it set with a code. So even though it's a publicly available channel, you can have privacy codes set on each of the walkies. So I have all mine set to be private. So if anyone was listening in, it would come through as like complete garbage. But for garbage, that's a new one. I don't say that normally. I meant to say garbling. But the way it works is great. And then also, because it's open, my producers have bought into the same set. So we all have them set up in the same ways, that I'm on the last channel, they're on the second to last channel. So if I need to drop over and have a quick word with production, just quickly turn the dial. If they need to come chat to me, they turn the dial around and things like that. So my photo team's on that channel, and then production's on the other channel. It tends to work quite well. But they've been surprisingly useful.
But they're also surprisingly expensive walkie-talkies when you start looking into them. Or they can be when you buy sets of them.
So mine, they're about 120 quid a handset, and then I bought a 6-way charger. So I think the charger was 200 and something quid. So and then when you get the earpieces as well, I think it's probably looking at about $1,000 for 6 with all the bits and pieces.
Hence, then this is why photographers really should be charging out this kind of stuff if they are packing it for as part of like a production case that goes with you, and then you can lump it all in and put that on your rental.
Absolutely, and also it's just nice to have. I have my own walkie, and I know the only person who uses that is me, and my Digi has his own walkie. And the only person who uses that is him. And I have a collection now of about 20 of these earpieces, and everyone has their name. I have like a Dymo labeler. And so after the job, I'll clean it for them, and then I'll pop it back in the bag, and it gets stuck with a sticker on. We never share earpieces. Everyone gets their own earpiece because they're not very expensive. They're like 7 or 8 quid, I think, each. And it's just much nicer to be like, here you go, Sam. There is your earpiece. Not been touched by anyone else. It's just a nice thing, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
So, but they were surprisingly useful.
Well, we'll link to those maybe, and the headpieces again in the show notes. So take a look if you're interested.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is there anything else on the agenda for today? Because it might end up being a short one. This one.
Honestly, no. It's a funny one, isn't it? Because I'm currently in production mode. I start a job in a couple of days, so my brain is just like full on talking about production things, which is not very exciting for the listeners. And I'm not buying any kit. So I have how many days have I got left? Right, so I have got 29 days left. So it's actually going all right. It's going all right. I think I have found something that I'm going to buy when I am able to buy.
Yeah.
So I've been lent. Actually, where is it? I've been lent one of the DJI Pocket 3s. You seen this?
Okay. The action cameras.
No, it's not.
No.
It's like a vlogging camera, and it's a little camera there. It's got a gimbal built into it, and it's a 1-inch sensor. It's about 650, 700 quid, I think it is, for like they do it on its own or like a creator set. I got lent the creator set, and it's pretty cool. So I the reason I wanted to try it out was that would it be useful if you had it in your camera bag and you could give it to people on set to film a little bit behind the scenes for you? And it turns out very, very useful. And the footage is really good. Osmo Pocket 3.
Osmo Pocket 3. Okie dokie.
And I think I might actually have to end up buying one. But it's not the end of the world cost-wise. And for the benefit I think I would see from it. Because what's been interesting about doing this whole challenge is that I'm now 29 days away from being able to buy. And I'm a bit like, I've got everything.
I tell you what, a lot of people were using these on the job I was just on. There was obviously big media presence where I was. It was, like the first of a series of events that are going to be happening worldwide. And so there was a lot of media there. And there was a lot of people filming with these. And I did I mean, they're very similar to a lot of other gimbals that you see out there. So it might not be this exact one. But I've never played around with one, but they look incredibly just compact, don't they?
Oh, like, it's so small. It's kind of like that's my iPhone. It's probably half, but maybe a bit deeper.
Okay,
they're really, really tiny, and they are completely idiot proof. I'm like, right, there you go. Give the camera that to record and point it at me.
Yeah,
and that's it. Great. And so I've even updated the contact video on my website straight away with just like a nice little bit of me shooting in a hotel suite. And it looked really good. Compare it to the rest of the footage, which was shot on an iPhone. And I think it's fairly obvious which one is shot on a gimbal that's nice and smooth. And I was really impressed. And it does 60 frames a second. So I was like, oh, cool. All right. I'll look into that.
Nice.
So yeah, I've been lent one, and I think in 29 days I might have to pull the trigger. But other than that, it's, we're so lucky, I think, at a stage in your career when you kind of open up your camera bag. And I was thinking to myself the other day, I was just like, if I could go back in time and if I could take 16 or 17 or 18-year-old me, or even 25-year-old me, and bring me into now and show me my camera bag and show me the kit, I'd be like, wow, you really don't need anything else. This is like, the best stuff. And it turns out, this is why I'm starting reading and making time for myself. The gear was just a completely unnecessary distraction from so many things.
It always is, and it's a procrastination tool. That said, I am quite excited about the upcoming.
Oh, what are you buying?
Well, the new Fuji X100. It's going to be the 6. I don't know how they're going to pronounce it. It was a V1.
Has it been announced now?
I believe it's coming out on the 20th of Feb. That's what is rumored to be coming out. I sold my old one, and I've had every iteration of that X100 camera, and I've loved them all, and they are fantastic for just having as a little everyday camera because of the size of them.
Right. Playing devil's advocate, why did you sell every single one?
Because I was upgrading to the next one each time.
Oh, okay, fair enough then. Okay, that's all right. Because I thought it might be like you and me were like with me and GoPro, right? I've owned like 7 or 8 GoPros over the years. I buy one, go, this is great, and then a month later, I'm like, I don't use it. I hate it.
Yeah. So what my big issue with them, or my one issue with them, is that the because they're so small, I've always found the numbers, the buttons to be a bit fiddly, like a bit too small and kind of difficult to find. If muscle memory, just you need something with a camera like that where you're not having to look at where you're putting your fingers and not having to like fight to actually press the button because it's so perfectly recessed with the back of the camera that actually, unless you get it perfectly right with your thumb, you can't press the button. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
You need something where you can just find it and press it quickly. So it would be interesting to see whether or not they made any design changes. I don't think they probably have, but who knows? I know the sensors and everything else is being changed.
But if it ain't broke, right? Like, I mean, what will happen? They'll probably bring in proper phase autofocus they'll bring in some of the tech from probably your professional bodies, I assume.
They're bringing in a 40 megapixel sensor and a new
40.
Yeah, 40.
Wow, that's a lot.
And it's also so they're redesigning the lens because it's a 23 mil, which is the equivalent of 35. Yeah, it's a 23 f2 lens, but it's lovely and compact. But I think they're redesigning it for this one because of the larger sensor. But it's a great kind of little everyday camera to have.
Don't mean to pull you up on that. Larger sensor?
Well, more megapixels. What do you mean?
Right. So same size sensor, but smaller.
Yeah, there will be. I'm not sure, actually. I'm guessing it won't be larger because they haven't changed the actual body chassis of the camera. So you're not going to be able to get... It's still going to be a crop sensor.
But if they went larger sensor, it would end up being full frame, which is obviously what Fuji fanatics have been crying out for years.
Yeah, when I say larger sensor, I mean more megapixels. I'm not being as technical as you are requesting.
Sure, but then what I would take from that is if they're cramming in more megapixels onto the sensor, well, it'll be worse in low light.
I think it's been redesigned, the sensor. I think it's the same sensor that they've used in one of their kind of mirrorless ranges.
Do you know if it's BSI?
I do not. Let me have a quick look.
It's
all. Problem is, it's all still rumored at the moment. So
of course, yeah. I mean, the thing
until it's out, we won't know.
It's a bit of a legendary camera line, isn't it? It's everyone I speak. I mean, I've owned one in the past, and personally, it wasn't for me. But I know there's so many people, yourself included, who really, really love it. And I do know also it obviously went berserk on TikTok. So if you're able to get a pre-order in, I guess, on these ones, I would imagine it's going to be one of these ones that just flies off the shelves.
Yeah. No, I mean there's always changes that they make. There are some leaked images that are out there, and from those leaked images, it doesn't look like the buttons on the back have changed massively, but we shall see. They look a bit bigger than they were.
But if you've got people who want the layouts changed, they've been criticised in the past, right, for doing multiple button layout changes. So they probably really don't want to do that.
Yeah. This isn't so much about changing the layout of the buttons; it's just about making the buttons slightly bigger and slightly more recessed, so you can actually find them with your thumb.
Right. Okay. Well, fingers crossed for you, my friend. Fingers crossed.
We shall see. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think, to be honest, that's everything. I'm really excited to get our next episode out with Emily. That's a really good one. And then we've got a couple lined up to record that are super interesting.
Yeah, we've had some requests for people to kind of learn about the photojournalism side of photography. So we have got a guest lined up who is a fantastic photographer based in the US, a veteran of many, many, many years, and has traveled around the world photographing conflicts and situations for news agencies. So I think that's going to be a really interesting episode as well, because if you've ever wanted to know what that world is like, but also maybe how to work for a news agency or what working for a news agency of that caliber is like, the realities of it, then hopefully that guest is going to be able to give us some insight into that. So we will reveal that probably on the next Fireside once it's all been in the can. But that is definitely scheduled in the calendar, so we'll be doing that. And actually, by the time we next do our Fireside, this Fuji might be out, so I can tell you a bit more about it.
Well, because it'll be in your hands.
No, I'm not. I mean, I'm interested in it, but I'm not one of those people that pre-order stuff. I'm not one who kind of rushes out and buys it before it's out. I will want to actually go and look at it. The great thing about being in London is the house. Fujifilm has the House of Photography in Covent Garden, and they tend to have, these the new cameras in quite soon.
Right.
And occasionally, they kind of send out invites for people to go and have like a look at it before it gets officially released. So,
what's that place like? Is it worth a visit?
They've got 3 levels there. They've got a basement level, which is for Fuji Professional Service members, where they have a studio that you can rent out. They also have a kind of almost like a reading area. In fact, Capture One very kindly invited me to an event there a couple of months back, and they used the downstairs of that venue, and we all got to play around with the latest Fuji GF camera that's just come out. But upstairs, and then on the ground floor, they've got all the cameras, but they also have loads of Fujifilm Instax products. So if you're they do printing. They also have all of the different types of Instax film that you can buy there. So all the limited edition stuff with different coloured borders or pattern borders. You can try out all of their stuff. You can print for free with the little Instaxes in store, which is quite fun. And then upstairs they've got kind of a gallery. So in terms of what's for me is really interesting is there's no other camera brands that have done that, have taken on the lease of a probably very expensive property in central London and made it into a kind of interactive camera store. Because let's be honest, like camera stores in London, if you go back 15, 20 years, there were a lot more of them. Jacobs, I remember, used to be up near New Oxford Street. That was a great store to go into, and right opposite was a massive Jessops. But you had two of them, right? One, the Jacobs tended to be a bit more kind of for the professional press photographer, and you can go and get repairs, but they could all, you got to know the people working there, and you go in. You got the London Camera Exchange still, which is on the Strand, which is a tiny shop, but the staff are super friendly, and they have a great little second-hand cabinet at the back of the shop, which is always worth a look.
I would also say, sorry, quickly, the LCE, they tend to be really good at listing all their secondhand stuff on the website.
Yeah, the website's
and you can
really
search by branch. So that's how I used to find a load of kind of like sneaky stuff. Shout out to LCE Guildford.
So they're great, but in terms of otherwise, I mean, you've got Fixation in Vauxhall still, which is part of Wex now, and obviously Wex took over Calumet, so you have the big Wex store up near Euston.
I think they've also just opened one in Putney.
Oh right, okay. I know they've also got one in East London, but aside from that, I sound a bit like that Monty Python sketch with what the Romans have ever done for us. So, but aside from the aqueducts but it's aside from those ones I've mentioned, there's not. Yep. When you go to LA or you go to New York, you've got these amazing big camera stores that you can go in. Some of which are my idea of hell, and some of which are absolutely great because they stock stuff that you can actually then try out. And especially when it comes to camera bags and stuff, it's great to be able to see those things in the flesh. I mean, Park Cameras have got a London store, haven't they? And Camera World.
Park Cameras have got Burgess Hill and London. Do you know the one I really miss? I don't know why, but I really miss the Calumet at Drummond Street.
Yeah, which is now a Wex, though.
No, they closed that down.
Did they close
it? I'm fairly certain it got closed down because it was just a big old building that got swallowed up, and I think in one of the train station building works. Because the Wex, I think, is on Commercial Road over in East, and I think there's now one in Putney as well. But the Drummond Street one, I have very fond memories of it because that's where I used to go when I was first kind of like starting to really go on this journey of being a professional photographer. So I would go in and I would they had like those old glass cabinets on the way in, which actually thinking about it now, that wouldn't happen because if someone was going to nick something, they just go in with a hammer, smash the glass, just take everything out. But like it used to be, it was a more innocent time, etc. But I used to go in, I used to like ogle at all the secondhand stuff.
Well, they had all camera grip as well, didn't they? They had all the stands and the Manfrotto grip and all of that stuff that's very difficult to actually see in the flesh anywhere.
Yeah. But it was a bright store as well. It was one of these old school buildings, and they had
like it was a warehouse.
Old warehouse / car garage, and the roof had these big skylights in. And I just remember spending a lot of time in there, just kind of fixated with stuff.
Yeah, so you're right. It has moved. It's now 37 to 39 Commercial Road, which is East London.
Right.
So near Aldgate East. So yeah, we're two old men reminiscing about camera stores. It's probably time for us to wrap this up.
It probably is. But it was a good time. So, but yeah, listen, thanks very much for listening to the latest episode of The Exposed Negative, which is exactly what the trail out will say as soon as we finish recording. So apologies for doubling up on that. And please do go over to the YouTube, hit subscribe, and get automatically the YouTube. Yeah, go over to the YouTube channel. And if you're wondering, it is youtube.com/@exposednegative, and then just hit subscribe. Help us out and possibly win a Capture One subscription.
Excellent. And we shall see you next time. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the show. If you would like to find out more, you can find us on YouTube, which is just youtube.com/exposednegative, and we are @xnegative on Instagram. And if you'd like to follow us personally, you can find myself there as @Greg Fennell, which is GregFunnell, and Tom can be found as tombarnes.com, which is TomBarnesDotcom. Thanks very much.